Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Dietrich Theater. I'm Erica Rogler, the theater's executive director, and I would like to thank you for joining us for our free Science on Screen Tonight event today, The Science of Chocolate Making and the film Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This delicious program is part of an initiative of the Coolidge Corner Theater with major support from the ALFRED P. SLOAN Foundation. We would like to thank them for sponsoring this entire event, from the movie to the popcorn, to the soda, and of course, free chocolate bars from Chocolates by Leopold. Let's give them a hand. We would also like to thank Curt Ross, the production manager of Chocolates by Leopold, for being with us. Before the film, he will share with us a little bit about his job. It sounds really fun, by the way. The chocolate company he works for, Chocolates by Leopold, and some fun facts about the science of making chocolate. After Curt's program, we'll show the film Charlie and the Chocolate Factory from 2005, starring Johnny Depp. Now please join me in giving a warm welcome to production manager Curt Ross.
Good morning. Thank you everybody for coming out today. I'd like to thank the Dietrich and our sponsors for having all of us here. It's good to see everybody out here at the theater today. I'd like to take a few minutes and discuss some of the science behind chocolate making and how that's going to differ from what you see in the movie. So, you know, some of you have seen Willy Wonka before. Some of you may have seen this Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And there's a lot of fantastical things that happen in the movie. Not all of that happens in real life. Okay. So I work for Chocolates by Leopold. I'm up in Montrose, PA. Some of you may have been there before. Some of you may not have. If you haven't, I encourage you to stop up and see us. We have a full range of chocolates. So everything from making the candy centers. So if it's a truffle or a cream, I make those before they go in. If it's an Oreo, I don't make those. So one of the questions that I get asked the most, do I like chocolate? Yes, I like chocolate a lot. I eat chocolate all day. In fact, I was in America. I was telling some of the staff out there, I eat chocolate all day long. Every day, 5 days a week. It's part of my job. If I make something like a truffle center, I have to taste it and make sure that it's going to be good before I put chocolate on it. If I make a cream, same thing. I have to test it. I don't make the Oreos, but I do test those because it's an Oreo. So the number 2 question I get asked all the time, every time, how do you coat this stuff with chocolate? If I've got an Oreo or a truffle or a pretzel, how do you get chocolate on it? Most people can figure out how you get it on top, but how do you get it on the bottom? How do you get it on the sides? Well, we have a special machine that does that for us. It's called our enrober. The enrober machine is a great big line. It's a production line. It's about the length of this room. And it has 3 major sections to it. First section is the bottomer. So to get a piece of candy to go through this machine, you have to have a bottom coat of chocolate on it. If you don't, the whole thing will fall apart. Candy's going to leak. You're going to have a mess. So the first thing you have to do is, I have assistants, which are not short and are not purple, by the way. I get asked that all the time. My assistants will take the candy center, like a truffle, and they put that on the bottomer. Now the bottomer has a wire belt, and there's chocolate that flows on top of this belt. And this belt goes through at a slow speed. You put the candy on there, and the candy sits in a pool of chocolate. It's about 1/4 of an inch deep. And that puts the chocolate on the bottom. The chocolate sticks to your candy center. From there, it goes on to a cooling belt. Now, this cooling belt, in my case, is about 8 feet long, and it's refrigerated. It's cooled. It's about 55 degrees. And what that does is that sets up the chocolate. So the chocolate becomes hard. So by the time it gets to the other end of that belt, it has a nice, smooth coat of chocolate on the bottom of the candy. That's how you get it on the bottom. The next piece is the enrober section. Really, it's not a very complicated machine. It has a big bowl of chocolate that spins, and it has a pump that brings it up to the top, and it flows down like a waterfall. And it goes through a metal hopper, and that hopper makes 2 curtains of chocolate. So your candy center goes through those 2 curtains of chocolate, and then it's completely coated. but the chocolate's still wet. So once it goes through those curtains, it goes into a cooling tunnel. This cooling tunnel's long, almost half the length of this room, and that's about 55 degrees on average too. So by the time it gets to the very end of the machine, and I've got other assistants, which still aren't purple, standing there waiting to pack the chocolate, and chocolate candy is nice and hard. And it's their job to pull the candy off, to inspect it, make sure there's no holes, make sure everything looks good, and then they take that and they put it in boxes or packaging, and it goes up for sale from there. Now, part of my job, which I told Erica earlier, I think she's a little jealous, I got to take the candy off the machine every so often and test it. So you'll see me running around my factory, often quite busy, taking candy off the end of the machine and eating it. You have to. I have to make sure it's good. That's the basics of enrobing a candy. One of the other questions that goes along with that is peanut butter cups. I'm sure a lot of you out there love peanut butter cups. And outside of actually eating them, everybody wants to know, how do you get the peanut butter inside the peanut butter cup? Well, it's actually quite simple. It takes two pieces of equipment. One's a funnel, and the other one's a decorating bag. Some of you may have decorated a cake before, or cupcakes, something like that, so you might be familiar with the decorating bag. I take them. I have a big tip that goes on the end. I fill it with peanut butter. And I have trays, kind of like when you do cupcakes at home. You have a tray with the papers in it. I have trays that have the little papers, or the big ones, depending on the size. And I come along with a funnel of chocolate, and I put some chocolate in the bottom of the cup, and I take my decorating bag and I fill it with peanut butter, and then I put chocolate on top, and it's sealed. And it's just that simple. One of the things that makes the peanut butter cups we do special, I use regular straight peanut butter. I don't have any fillings. I don't have any additives. A lot of the big box peanut butter cups that you get, I won't name names, but a lot of the big ones, if you notice, they have a little bit of a grit because some companies will put a filler in it. They put whey. Like if you ever see at the store, you see like the whey protein and things like that. They put that in there as a filler so they don't have to use as much peanut butter. My peanut butter cups are straight peanut butter. So when you go to a boutique shop like ours, you're going to see a better quality candy because we use a better quality ingredients. I just chocolate and peanut butter. So those are the two biggest questions that I get most of the time. Another question I get all the time is, what's the difference between chocolate? So if I go to the store and I buy chocolate chips, if I go to the store and I buy a Hershey's bar, if I go to the store and I buy a Chocolates by Leopold bar, what's the difference? Chocolate comes in three major types. There's milk chocolate, there's dark chocolate, just like the bars that everybody got when they came in the door today. There's also white chocolate. So chocolate comes from the cocoa beans. And when they process the cocoa beans, there's a whole lot of things that are going on. They break the beans, they roast the beans, they take the nibs out, they process stuff, they grind it. Eventually you end up with a paste, you end up with chocolate. Dark chocolate is the first type of chocolate that you end up with. Okay, dark chocolate is the most pure type of chocolate that you will get that's closest to a cocoa bean. Milk chocolate was invented in the 1800s. When they discovered they could add dairy, they would take milk and add that to the chocolate, and that would smooth the chocolate out and it would give it a lighter flavor. A lot of dark chocolate, especially when it's not processed as much, tends to be very bitter. Sometimes you get the very, very dark chocolate and it's very bitter. A lot of people don't like that. Along the lines of baking chocolate, for example. When you start adding dairy to that, it smooths it out and you end up with milk chocolate. White chocolate, believe it or not, is not actually chocolate. By law, white chocolate is not chocolate because it does not have cocoa solids. So after you process a cocoa bean, the two big things that you end up with is cocoa butter and cocoa solids. A lot of you have heard cocoa butter. Some of you may even use it for skincare. It's good for that, but it's also good for eating. Cocoa butter is essentially a vegetable fat. So inside the cocoa bean, there's vegetable fats, which we call cocoa butter, and that's processed out. Now, dark chocolate and milk chocolate typically has cocoa butter in it. You can process it all the way out. They squeeze it out in giant presses, and then some chocolate they will add an oil, like palm kernel oil is the most popular one. So if you get If you get like Hershey's Kisses or you get the chocolate chips at the store, you ever notice you can melt those down, put it on anything, and it looks absolutely beautiful. It's very easy to work with. Throw it right in the microwave. That's because it has palm kernel oil in there. Chocolate that has cocoa butter in it, you can't do that. If you put it in a microwave, you're going to burn it. If you heat it too hot, you're going to burn it. And you have to, when you do melt it, you have to melt it slowly, carefully, and then you have to temper it. That's because you have the cocoa butter in there. So the different amount of cocoa butter and fats and oils that you have in the chocolate depends on the blend that you have. Chocolate has many different blends. My company, I bring in several different blends, and then I blend those together to make our signature blend of chocolate. So there's a lot of science behind the ingredients in chocolate. So that's why when you look at a chocolate bar and you think the ingredients on the back label should say just chocolate, that's why it says it'll have cocoa butter or palm kernel oil or something like lecithin. We use that all the time. Lecithin is a binding agent. So we use that to combine oils and milks and dairy and things like that. For example, when I make a truffle center, the center of a truffle is essentially a type of ganache. So if you've ever had a dessert where somebody says, well, I'm going to serve you ganache, and it's real, creamy, that's a creamier type ganache. A truffle center is a harder type ganache. And that depends on the amount of dairy that you add in and how you process that. So when we make white chocolate, what they do is they press out all of the cocoa solids. So there's no cocoa solids in it. And by law, you have to have cocoa solids to be chocolate. So white chocolate is chocolate in name only. Essentially what white chocolate is they take those vegetable fats, they take that cocoa butter, and they combine that with a lot of sugar, and they use a little bit of lecithin, and then they put in some vanilla, and sometimes they'll add other flavors. But that's how you end up with white chocolate, and that's what gives it that white, creamy appearance. Now, at the same time, they can also replace that cocoa butter with palm kernel oil or something of that nature, and you end up with a white chocolate that you can throw in the microwave and do whatever you wish with. Now, the difference between the oils and a cocoa butter is partially how the chocolate's going to taste, but how it's going to work. So somebody like me with a chocolate factory, I have to temper my chocolate because I use cocoa butter chocolate. But because I use cocoa butter-based chocolate, that's what gives those candy bars a nice snap. If you took your candy bar and you broke that in half right now, you'd get that nice snap. When you bite into it, you're going to get that crunch, that snap in your mouth, and it's going to melt on your tongue. If you take that candy bar and you put that in your hand, it's also going to melt in your hand. Now, if you go and get chocolate that has the palm kernel oil in it, that's not necessarily going to melt that same way. That's because chocolate with cocoa butter in it melts at about 80 degrees is when it starts melting. So your hand at about 95 is going to melt chocolate. That's why if you have a good chocolate bar, don't leave it in your car. I've had a lot of customers do that, and they come back in and they're like, I melted all my chocolate. And it always happens during the summer, never in the wintertime. So don't leave it in your car or your pocket because it will melt. But that's what makes a good, fine chocolate. So there's lots of different blends out there. And there's lots of different ways to process chocolate. And it all depends what you're going to do with it. If you're going to decorate your cupcakes, go with the chocolate chips. If you want a good chocolate bar to sit down and eat and have a nice piece of candy, go with the cocoa butter-based chocolate. That's a big difference. It's also a little more expensive, but that's what makes it a good chocolate because it takes a lot of work to get it to what we expect out of chocolate. Another question I get all the time is, why is my piece of candy gray? I'm sure a lot of you have received a box of chocolate some point in the past. You guys have probably gone to the store and said, well, I'm just going to get this 50-cent candy bar. It's good enough. You take the wrapper off, you pop the lid on that box of chocolate, and it's gray. It's spotted. It has white on it. We've all seen it. I can't tell you how many people I've seen will sit there and say, that's mold, and they toss it right in the garbage. Well, it's not. I guarantee you that's not mold. What that is, it's called bloom. So chocolate blooms. Not like a flower, it doesn't look pretty, but it's the same type of concept. So when a flower blooms, it opens up and pollen comes out, all that. Chocolate blooms because chocolate is porous. So even when chocolate is solid, it still has holes. If you were to look at it in a microscope, you would see chocolate is porous. So chocolate does two things. It lets oils and moisture pass through the chocolate. So if you have a candy center, say you open up that box of chocolates and it's got some creams in there, and you notice it's got gray on the bottom of a piece of candy or along the top, what happens is the oils and the moisture that's in the center of that candy that was used to make that will eventually bleed through, and it comes out and it looks gray. The same thing happens with the ingredients in the chocolate. So as I mentioned previously, chocolate has cocoa butter, it has oils in it, it has milk in it. So certain chocolates, like milk chocolate, sometimes will bloom faster than dark chocolate because it has a lot higher moisture content with the added dairy. So the moisture will come through and it'll bloom and it'll look gray. It's not going to affect the taste. At most, if your candy center, say you have that cream or that truffle, might be a little stiffer on the inside because some of that moisture's come out, but it will still taste fine. The other thing that you will see with bloom is you open up a candy bar, especially the less expensive ones, because they use more oils in the making of the candy bar, that oil will come through and it will bloom as well. Now, on the reverse side of bloom, chocolate, as I mentioned, is porous. Chocolate absorbs a lot of things. So if you take chocolate and you put it into a environment that doesn't smell very good, if you have, say, a barn and you take a chocolate bar and you stick it in the barn, you pull that chocolate bar out after a couple of days, it's going to smell like the barn. And it's probably going to taste like the barn. So don't leave your chocolate in the barn. We get that all the time. That's why, for example, in my store or my factory, we have to be very careful about what we smell like. So I don't have employees that come to work with a lot of perfumes or, smoking is another big thing. We can't have people that are smoking on premises, or if I have somebody that walks in a store that smells like smoke, the chocolate will pick that up because chocolate is very absorbent, it's very porous. So if you go somewhere and you pick up a piece of chocolate and it smells funny or tastes a little funny, it's probably because there was a different type of scent nearby. So these are some of the things that are involved with the making of chocolate, and a lot of things that people don't realize about chocolate. Chocolate is an art form and a science, kind of like the movie you're going to see. Movies are a wonderful art form, and it talks a little bit about the science of chocolate in a fantastical way. But the important thing to keep in mind is chocolate is best enjoyed. So I encourage everybody to go out and eat a little bit of chocolate every day. I have never met anybody that didn't benefit from eating a little bit of chocolate. One of the best things about it is it's going to bring a smile to your face. If you're having a bad day, I guarantee a good piece of chocolate is going to bring a smile to your face. The other thing I encourage people is the wonderful thing about the world of chocolate. There's a lot of flavors that you may never have had before that you could experience in a box of chocolates. Kind of like another famous movie when they say life is like a box of chocolates. It's very true. It really is very true. When I started my job, I'd only ever eaten a few flavors of chocolate. And one of the things I found out is because I have to taste all the different chocolate, I found a whole wide array of flavors that I never knew existed that exist now. So chocolate is one of those few things that you can dive right into the chemical side of it. If you're a chemist, if you're taking chemistry, you can dive right into that part of chocolate and learn a lot. You can go all the way to the psychology of chocolate and see how people interact. For example, you have a candy bar and a child. I mean, what's better than that, right? If you have a peanut butter cup on a bad day, what's better than that, right? A little bit of chocolate on your ice cream in the middle of summer is a great thing. So chocolate is very unique in that it really touches our lives in a multitude of ways, and there is a multitude of sciences just beyond how to actually make chocolate that's involved with chocolate. So I want to open up to a few questions. Does anybody have questions today? Question is, do we do candy making classes? At my company, I do not. Unfortunately, I don't have the room for doing candy making classes. We're a small company. I have a small factory. I'm very full. We do on occasion do tours. After all of this COVID stuff is over, I'm hopeful that we'll open back up for tours. We used to do, before COVID, quite a few tours a year. So I would encourage you to keep an eye on our website. You're welcome to come to a tour when we're able to open up and do that again. So hopefully we can get past this terrible disease and, get back to capacity again. If you stop into our store, you will see pictures and you will encounter the people that work there with a lot of knowledge. So if you have questions and you want to learn more about chocolate, you're welcome to stop in. If it's during the week and you stop in and you have questions, you want to talk to me, you're welcome to ask for me, and I'd be happy to come up to the store and have a discussion. Oh boy, question is, what's my favorite kind of chocolate? Well, I'll tell you, I get asked this all the time. 3 or 4 times today. That's kind of tough. I like dark chocolate. I eat chocolate all the time, as I said. I even eat the raw chocolate that we get in. I actually, believe it or not, I have to test everything. So it's the hardest part of my job. I have to test it. I like regular dark chocolate. As far as candy centers, I really like peanut butter stuff, peanut butter truffles. I like peanut butter cups. I've also come to like a few different flavors. Marzipan is one. Marzipan is a flavor. It's based on almond paste. Okay? If you were to go over to Europe, it's a very old type of candy. They make marzipan bread. They make marzipan candies over there. Our marzipan candy, it's very soft and chewy. It's a creamy center, and it has a very faint almond flavor. I like that. That's really good. Almost like a mint type aftertaste. I like creams. Raspberry cream is a good one. I think a dark chocolate covered raspberry cream is out of this world. It's very good. Any more questions? One more? Okay, 2 question. What is our best-selling chocolate? And what sells better, milk or dark? Hands down, our best-selling piece of candy is Butter Crunch. If you're not familiar, it's an almond toffee center. It's coated in chocolate and then covered in nuts, crushed almonds. We do it in pieces. We do it in bites, little small pieces. That is by far our #1 seller. I make thousands and thousands of pounds of Butter Crunch every year. Almost weekly, I'm making another 100 pounds of Butter Crunch. It's a very good seller. Milk chocolate is, company-wide, milk chocolate is probably our #1 seller as far as milk versus dark versus white. It depends on the location, believe it or not. We have 3 stores. I have one in Montrose. I have one up in Binghamton, New York. I have another one down at State College. Our Montrose store is kind of split. It's almost even, but milk edges out dark. In State College, for example, dark is a better seller than milk. Binghamton, milk outsells dark probably 2 to 1. It really depends on the local economy. Some people would say it depends on the education level. It's often thought that the more educated you are, the more you like dark chocolate. I've not really found that to be the case. I really think it's a matter of preference, what you grew up with. So it varies, but I would say overall, on the whole, milk edges out dark just by a little bit. So anyways, thank you again for all coming here. Now,